Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1171, 1171, June the 24th, 2020, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, well, it is Wednesday. Of course, that's the day that I take out the trash and have some chicken. And I believe tonight I'm going to go with some boneless chicken, some mixed veggies, buttered rolls, and some applesauce. That's dinner for this evening, which will, of course, include chicken, boneless. Now, baked, by the way. Now, let's go ahead and get to the news of the past 24 hours, and probably the two biggest stories of the last 24 hours. Both are breaking on justthenews.com. That is John Solomon's site, justthenews.com. So this first story is pretty interesting, so let's go ahead and talk about that. Okay, just the news. It looks like the Department of Justice has disclosed to a federal court yesterday, on Tuesday, new pages of notes from Peter's Been Stroking Us. Peter's Been Stroking Us. The DOJ disclosed to a federal court yesterday new pages of notes from Peter's Been Stroking Us that are exculpatory to Michael Flynn. The notes were presented to Judge Sullivan by the U.S. Attorney Michael Sherwin. The notes were taken in January of 2017 at the exact same time FBI agents had recommended shutting down the investigation into Flynn, which was, of course, overruled by the FBI superiors on the 7th floor. The notes are believed to have been taken on January the 3rd and January the 5th. Solomon's source says the notes are highly exculpatory. Highly exculpatory. Solomon's source could not reveal the actual wording in the notes because they are under seal. Question: so will Judge Sullivan finally dismiss this case? Or will he continue on with this partisan charade? Well, I think the answer to that question is the latter. Despite the fact that he's received this extremely exculpatory evidence, or highly exculpatory evidence, showing that Peter's Been Stroking Us obviously had more information that was favorable to Flynn, and that this was never disclosed in the case. They're just now finding this out. They're just now discovering these notes. This should put the end to it, but I think that Sullivan is already in this thing too deep now, and he would be thoroughly embarrassed. So I think he's going to run the game out as long as he can. I think he can get one or two more hearings out of this and drag it out a little longer, but I think that there must be some sort of another plan. There's some reason that they want Sullivan to drag this out. And it can't be that they want to drag it out to the 2020 election, because I don't think you can drag something like this out that long, which tells me that there's probably something else in the works. There's something else going on here. Sullivan isn't going through this, putting himself through this. I mean, you could say, yeah, because he wants to get the love and admiration of the deep state and all his friends in the D.C. wine club circuit, and friends of Hillary and Obama. You could say that, but to me it seems like a bit of a stretch. To me, I think that there must be something else going on, that they want this extended for some reason, that there's something else coming that ultimately will raise questions into the Department of Justice's decision to dismiss the case. They don't want it to be finalized because they're waiting for something else to happen. And that's what makes the most sense to me. But I could be reading more into this than what there actually is. So, it could just be a hunch. I could be wrong. Maybe it is. Sullivan just wanted to have the admiration of all of his friends, you might say. His comrades. It's really hard to say because there's a lot of things going on simultaneously. A lot of moving parts going on right now. never forget the big picture. And the big picture is Trump and damaging Trump and anyone around Trump. Because another 4 years of Trump, he could set back the agenda 100 years and likely see a lot of criminal activity exposed, a lot of perpetrators brought to justice. There's a lot of reasons why they cannot allow Trump to be reelected. And they'll do anything and everything to see that that doesn't happen. So there's a full court press on anything and everyone around Trump, which would include Flynn, Barr, Durham, anyone. And so that is why I question the motives of everything that I see. So the long and short of this story is that the Department of Justice has obviously recently discovered these notes from Peter's been stroking us. I don't know if they came out of the Durham investigation or where. We don't know how they came about discovering these notes, but clearly they show highly exculpatory information on Flynn that was held by Peter's been stroking us, which means other people knew about it, that was withheld from the judge. Now that information has been provided to the judge, and this just occurred yesterday, so we haven't heard a response from Judge Sullivan yet. But it's possible that he could come out and say, yeah, okay, well, based on this new evidence, I am going to dismiss the case. It's possible that he could do something else, like ignore it. So we'll continue to see where this goes. I would think we'll hear something. I'm expecting here in a little while to get on YouTube and see if there's any interviews with Sidney Powell to see if she can shed more light on what may be going on here. The next story I find very interesting. It's also from justthenews.com. And this story could be very damaging for the Nadler and Schiff hopes for another set of hearings targeting Attorney General Barr. But they're going to work very, very hard on targeting Attorney General Barr. I can assure you that. They need to destroy his credibility so that when he brings indictments, Durham brings indictments against the coup plotters, they can literally challenge all of this in court by challenging not so much the evidence against them, but challenging the credibility, the honesty, the professionalism, the integrity of the investigation itself. And to do that, you need to target the investigators. That would be Barr and Durham. So in my mind, that is what this is all about. But let me read through the story for you, or pieces of it. But you might want to go read the whole story for yourself. I'm going to give you the pertinent parts from this story from justthenews.com. So this could be very damaging to, this information could be very damaging, and that's in the story, could be very damaging to the Penguin and the Bug-Eyed Fool's hopes for another set of hearings that are designed to target Attorney General Barr. And may also shed some light on why Attorney General Barr fired U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman. Just the News has just obtained emails from the fall of 2018 between an American lawyer named Bud Cummins, who's out of Little Rock, Arkansas, who's also a former U.S. attorney. And these emails are between he and the chief federal prosecutor in Manhattan, which is the Southern District of New York. The memos show the memos show that before the Ukrainian prosecutors reached out to Rudy Giuliani, they had already contacted Jeffrey Berman's office in the Southern District of New York at least 5 times in October 2018 to arrange a meeting between Ukraine prosecutor Yuri Lutsenko and Berman's office in the Southern District of New York. Lutsenko wanted to confidentially share information with Berman's office, evidence that raised concerns about the Biden's behavior, as well as alleged wrongdoing in the Paul Manafort corruption case. Berman's office would never respond, so that is why they went to Giuliani. The allegations included that Joe Biden had exercised influence to protect Burisma Holdings after his son Hunter and his business partner Devon Archer had joined Burisma's board of directors and were paid substantial sums of money. Biden and Archer's firm had received more than $3 million in payments from Burisma between 2014 and 2016. At the very same time, Burisma's U.S. representatives were lobbying the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Kiev to make the corruption charges against Burisma go away. At the same time, Biden and Archer had contacts in 2015 and 2016 with the Secretary of State, John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, and the Deputy Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. Also, Cummins told Berman that Lutsenko had evidence that the Black Ledger was doctored and that the U.S. knew all about it. And, of course, this Black Ledger was what was used to target Paul Manafort and begin the investigation into him. The Black Ledger allegation is what forced Manafort out of the Trump campaign and eventually led to him being convicted on money laundering and tax evasion charges. Cummins also told Berman that Lutsenko had evidence that the U.S. Embassy and the FBI willfully pressured Ukrainian officials to falsify evidence to be leaked to the media about Manafort to affect the outcome of the 2016 election. Marie Yovanovitch played a role in those discussions along with John F. Kerry. Despite Cummings having 4 phone calls and 1 email conversation with Berman in October 2018, Berman's office never followed through to set any meetings with Lutsenko and his lawyer, Mr. Cummins. Cummins' emails show that Ukrainian authorities were not interested in investigating the Bidens, but that they only wanted to provide evidence of possible violations of U.S. law so American authorities could investigate, and they had no interest in involving the Trump White House. Lutsenko has not been able to travel to the U.S. because the U.S. Embassy in Kiev had been blocking his visa to travel to the U.S. Who do you think might have been blocking his visa? You think maybe Yovanovitch? Cummins made clear on his final communication with Berman that Lutsenko was prepared to deliver serious evidence, including copies of 2 ledgers in the Manafort case that Ukraine prosecutors believed were faked. Cummins also requested that Lutsenko be able to meet with a lower-ranking federal prosecutor simply to transfer the evidence. And this all went down in October 2018, but there was no further response from Berman. Jeffrey Berman. Now, maybe that has something to do with why Mr. Berman, along with some other things he's been involved in there in the Southern District of New York, was fired. But what really stands out to me in this story, because a lot of this is not necessarily new information, we've heard it, but we're just getting more factual backing information, supporting information. For those of you who have been watching my videos for quite some time, you know that back, I think it was actually the fall of last year, is when we learned that in late 2016, early 2017, not exactly sure what month, but somewhere in that time range, the FBI had actually set up an office inside the Ukrainian embassy, or the U.S. embassy in Ukraine, to coordinate with Ukrainian officials. And of course, that's really all that we really know about it. Now, what they were coordinating with Ukrainian officials over was, of course, left up to your imagination. And I suggested back then that they were coordinating with Ukrainian officials to run a frame-up on Manafort and dirty up him and the Trump campaign. That the FBI was opened up this office in the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, well, actually I think it was in Washington. I think it was the Ukrainian Embassy in D.C. is where the FBI set up the office to work with Ukrainian officials and officials from the U.S. Ambassador's office, which would include people on Yovanovitch's staff. So they were obviously working together. And again, it shows that the FBI wasn't just involved in things like the Crossfire Hurricane, the FISAs, and everything else. They were involved in the Ukraine. Early stuff that was happening in Ukraine to set up Manafort, to get dirt on Trump, and all of this. And I've never heard anybody talk about that. Not Nunes's committee or Goodlatte's committee or any other committee. I've never heard anyone talk about it on Fox News. I've never heard DeGeneva talk about it. I've never heard anyone talk about it. Despite the fact that I covered it right here on my video about a year ago, less than a year ago. Probably, I think it was late fall. I think it was fall of last year when we learned that the FBI had set up like a satellite office in the embassy, the Ukrainian embassy, and I believe it, if I can remember correctly, it was the U.S. It was the Ukrainian embassy in the U.S. And that they were coordinating with Ukraine embassy officials and U.S. embassy officials, and that would have included people on Yovanovitch's staff. And this is all being done right about the time that the Black Ledger stuff is coming out about Manafort. So then, of course, we had already learned a long time ago from Lutsenko and people who knew him and were talking about this, that he had tried and tried and tried to get this information to the Department of Justice or the FBI, but they had no, well, they didn't actually even try the FBI because they just did not trust them, but tried to get this to people at the Department of Justice. We'd heard all this before. This is just the first time we're getting this kind of evidence to back it up from Lutsenko himself, or in this case, this attorney that was working on behalf of Lutsenko, not necessarily representing him as a client, but just offering to help out to get this information into the right hands. That's how this lawyer, Mr. Cummings, identifies himself in all of this. And it was Berman himself, his office, but him personally, who had conversations, 5 of them, 4 by phone, 1 by email, in October of 2018, where they're saying, look, we really think you need to see this evidence, blah, 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 blah. But as we can see, Jeffrey Berman had no interest. That's why they had to then say, well, I guess we have no choice, but let's go to Giuliani. So they went to Giuliani only after the Department of Justice, Jeffrey Berman at the Southern District of New York, failed to look at the evidence or even provide an outlet for Lutsenko to get the evidence in their hands. They wouldn't even look at it. So it just builds into the overall corruption factor, and it shows us that, I mean, like I said, we suspected last year when we first heard about this FBI satellite office at this Ukrainian embassy. We suspected, obviously, why would the FBI be doing that? And why did they set it up at the end of 2015, early 2016, right when you have Chalupa and all these other people coordinating, including Poroshenko making negative statements about Trump. You've got Chalupa and other operatives arranging meetings with politicians in D.C. between Ukrainian officials. They got the FBI in there. You've got Chalupa telling the Clinton campaign and the DNC that there's a lot of issues, a lot of dirt on Manafort. He's connected to Trump. There could be other things. So it's pretty obvious now that the FBI was actively involved in putting together the hit piece, the hit information, the black ledgers, that they were involved in creating the false evidence. And as it says here in this story, it says that the FBI knew that the evidence about the Black Ledger was false, knew a lot of the information that was being thrown around about Manafort was false, yet the Mueller team, using those same FBI agents, used that to open up the case against Manafort. Even though we're being told now that they knew it was all garbage, not true. But now, this takes it to another level. This suggests that the FBI not only knew that the Manafort Black Ledger was garbage, but that they actually were involved in manufacturing the false evidence that they later used to take down Manafort. Oh, man. Unbelievable. Now, let's cover a couple other important stories. First, a couple of funny things. Yesterday, Burisma Joe and Obama appeared together on a split screen for a virtual fundraiser. And I don't know if you saw the clip. The clip I saw is only about 10 seconds long, but it's priceless. The look on Obama's face is priceless. Because Biden goes off on one of his tangents where he's making absolutely no sense whatsoever. None. And you can literally see the look on Obama's face like, it's obvious that what's going through Obama's mind is he doesn't even know what he's saying. What he's saying doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's lost his mind. Oh my God, man, I'm backing this guy. I'm supporting this guy. We're counting on this guy. That's what's going through Obama's mind. Watch the video clip. It's only 10 seconds, but the look on Obama's face as Biden is drifting off into, word salad is just priceless. I mean, you can literally read his face. It's pretty obvious Obama's figured it out. Biden's not up to this. He is literally not up to it. Excuse me. They must really believe that Trump is so bad or so unpopular that even someone as checked out as Biden is could win. They must think Trump's really unpopular, really bad, or else they have a plan to rig the elections. That's the only thing I can think of. They know Biden can't actually beat Trump in a fair and square competition. They have to know this. And that should give us all some concern. Like I said earlier, there's two things that are major factors in my mind right now. Number one, the deep state, Obama, the coup plotters, the whole 9 yards, they know they cannot allow Trump to win re-election. They know they can't. At the same time, they probably know for sure that Biden cannot beat Trump fair and square. Trump has to be defeated, but they know they can't defeat him fairly. That's why I suggest that there's other things going on. There has to be. They got to have a better plan than Biden. Don't know if you saw the video clip also yesterday of MSNBC's and Andrea Mitchell, where she was nearly assaulted by a man wearing pink lingerie and a blonde wig while she was covering the D.C. failed Black House Autonomous Zone. Yeah, so she's standing there getting ready to do some sort of an interview. And you see this crazy person literally wearing pink lingerie and a blonde wig. It's a man wearing pink lingerie and a blonde wig who comes running right at Andrea Mitchell. And at the last minute, just before he gets to her, a couple of security guys push this guy out of the way and, get him away from Andrea Mitchell. At which point, Andrea Mitchell starts turning around, looking around, and she says, "Where are the police when you need them?" Where are the police when you need them? Well, Andrea Mitchell, a lot of the folks over there at your network seem to have been pretty supportive of defunding the cops. Have been beating up on the cops. Have been targeting the cops. Maybe they saw Andrea Mitchell and said, that's that woman from MSNBC. Screw them. Well, that's probably what happened. They ain't got your back. Let's put it that way. They ain't got your back because you didn't have theirs. Looks like the BLM activist, the Black Lives Marxist activist in Atlanta who torched the Wendys, has been taken into custody. She will likely be charged with first-degree arson. Took them 2 weeks to track her down, but they tracked her down. And, of course, there's still these rumors or stories that are out there, have not yet been proven, that she may have been the girlfriend of this guy, I forget his name now, Archer, I think his name, I forget his name. But the guy who was killed there, who was shot by the cops in the back or whatever. There's rumors that she may have been his girlfriend. Her name is White. Something White. Well, as I mentioned to you a couple days ago, I think that there is a full-scale effort to destroy the reputation of Attorney General Barr, to possibly, if they can't, I think they would like to have him impeached or removed. If they can't do that, they want to do as much damage to him as possible, much like Trump, because of what they know is coming out. Again, they know they can't argue the evidence that Mr. Durham will likely bring against them, but what they will argue is that the entire investigation was a political hit job done by political operatives working for the president, like Barr and Durham. And based on that, any charges against any of the deep state coup plotters should be thrown out of court because it was a biased, rigged investigation, however you want to look at it. I think that that is the game plan at this point. And this story here provides further evidence of that fact. As you know, over the past 2 days, we've been talking about this story where Attorney General Barr fired Jeffrey Berman, the top U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. Now, we just talked about one reason, amongst many other reasons. He was involved in a lot of the Mueller prosecutions, but we just talked about some more about his not wanting to look at any evidence having to do with Biden, Ukraine, the firing of the prosecutor, and all things Ukraine. He did not want to look at this evidence, despite the fact that an American lawyer and former U.S. attorney was trying to find a way to get this information to him. Mr. Berman wasn't interested. He was very interested in prosecuting all the people for Mueller against the Trump team, but not interested in looking at the evidence. So Berman is fired, and the only reason we were given by Attorney General Barr is that Trump had made the decision, Attorney General Barr made the decision that they wanted to bring in someone else to head up the office in the Southern District of New York. And that in the interim period, until they can get him confirmed, they were going to have this other individual, Craig Carpinto, to come in and be the interim, because they want Berman out of there on July the 3rd, and they want this guy Carpinto, or Carpenito, to come in and fill the period in the interim. And that's what we were told, that's what we've been told up to this point. Berman's out because they're going to be nominating a new person for that job. And in the meantime, between the period from July 3rd until the new U.S. attorney is confirmed, until then, this other individual, this Mr. Carpenito, 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 is going to be holding down the fort until the person that they want to put in there is actually confirmed. So there's a couple different parts to this. And just let me make sure I got my notes straight here. A lot of notes today. And I gotta make sure I got these in order. Okay. Let me just roll with it and see. I'm sorry about that. Let me just roll with this and see where this takes me. I think I got my notes out of order. But let's go with it. Okay, so there is an attorney named Paul Kamenar, K-A-M-E-N-A-R. Paul Kamenar. This attorney has filed an ethics complaint with the Department of Justice against Mueller attorney Aaron Zelensky for misconduct that occurred during the investigation into the prosecution of Roger Stone. Zelensky is set to testify to Jerry Nadler's committee today, Wednesday, where he is expected to lie to Congress in his testimony. Zelensky quit his job after the Department of Justice ruled that the time Stone is to serve after his conviction by Zelensky's and the Mueller team of lying to Congress. Yeah, Zelensky quit his job after the DOJ reduced the time Stone is to serve after he was convicted by Zelensky and the Mueller team for lying to Congress. Okay? Now, Zelensky is a former Huffington Post columnist and U.S. attorney. Zelensky was recommended by Rodenstein to assist Jeannie Rhee in Stone's prosecution. Zelensky also served under the rotten Reverend Clinton in the State Department as a political appointee. Zelensky was caught lying to the court in the Papadopoulos matter, and he has been referred by Devin Nunes for DOJ prosecution for lying to the court in the Papadopoulos matter. Also, Zelensky filed a fraudulent sentencing memo in the Roger Stone case. So that is what's going on today with Zelensky in his testimony to Congress. That's what you can expect. He's expected to lie, and he is expected to suggest that Attorney General Barr forced him and the two other attorneys to try to do something they did not want to do or say something they did not want to say. The purpose of his testimony to Nadler's committee is to damage AG Barr. Now, on top of that, at the exact same time that this is happening, we get the story that breaks at the end of the day on Tuesday afternoon about this Craig Carpenito, who is the person who is supposed to be filling in after Berman leaves and before the new guy is confirmed. But Carpenito comes out, and now I'm wondering if he's part of a setup to take down Barr, because on Tuesday morning, Carpenito had a conference call with his staff where he says that he only agreed to be acting U.S. attorney because Barr told him that Berman resigned of his own volition. And on the very same day, yesterday afternoon, law professors and faculty, 65 of them from Barr's alma mater, George Washington University, penned a letter saying Barr has failed to fulfill his oath of office and support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So on the very day that Zelensky is supposed to come in and testify against Barr, you get this guy who was supposed to be filling the interim period, coming out now and saying that Barr misled him about the circumstances for which he should be taking over on an interim basis. And at the same exact time that Barr's old alma mater, George Washington University, is coming out saying he's not fit for office. All one day before the hearings. What's that look like to you?